All right. I guess we can start. Welcome everyone. My name is Maciej. I'm coming from Poland, but I am I'm quite a frequent traveler, so it's hard to say where is my real home. I was asked by Michael to join the conference, and I was thinking because there's such a diversity of topics in this conference. So I prepared for you some insights into digitalization. I've been an investor for 17 years now, so I can show you, I think, how I see the digitalization in the world and before the coronavirus, what's happening due to the coronavirus, and what I believe is going to be the effect of the current coronavirus situation. I think it might be useful for the ones that either run the business, so they can see, which direction this business might be directed, and number one. Number two, probably how some of the issues may be tackled efficiently. So I'll probably tell you about my way of thinking in the next 15 minutes, and then if you have some questions, I'll try to answer them, and hope that's interesting. So let me share my screen with you. Um, do you see the presentation? Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Good. So first of all, in general, digitalization is not something new. It's probably started in the 1960s and is growing ever since. Right now, 70% of organizations worldwide, they have their own digitalization strategy. But of course, there are both sectors and companies that do it well, and there are companies that do it not so well, and there are companies that are not doing it at all. But that's and the changing world and quite sudden changes as we are observing right now. They just tell me, and I think that everyone understands this the same way, that you are either digitalized, you are flexible, or you can not survive from business perspective. So why is it important? Because we have throughout my investment career, I've seen that technology can build genuine competitive advantage, and a competitive advantage that is not as easy to match by competitors. Number two, it's just an easier way to improve scale, efficiency, and flexibility, and therefore it can lead to better profits for your business. And the main thing is that maybe like 100, 200 years ago, things didn't change that quickly. Communication was not that well. Right now, things are changing, daily. So especially in a situation like this, so digitalization, having a digital business model, it allows you to be prepared and be responsive to the changing situation. And well, when we see like a big array of diverse companies, what differentiates them between those that succeeded in digitalizing and those that didn't succeed in digitalizing is how they put these digital concepts to work. So how they sort of internally in their organization, how they treat digitalization, with what sort of importance. Number two, well, we sort of take a wider look. We sort of try to see how the company is interacting using digital tools. So how it engages with clients and suppliers. And number three is how internal processes are run, and how whether they run sort of more traditional way, or they are run in a more digital and modern way. So I switched those digitalization into three areas, and we'll tell you a bit about them, and then I will show you how these are represented in different sectors, and how the current situation will influence the dynamic here. So first is this core digitalization. Yeah, so old companies were believing that they are digitalizing if they bought computers, software, and some basic stuff. Yeah, so of course that started in the 1960s in retail, finance. So these were areas that sort of first discovered the importance and value embedded in technology. Right now, what we see is that we have much more traditional channels, traditional sectors that are digitalizing. So right now we can digitalize buildings, we can digitalize cars, we can digitalize equipment, all kinds of small and large equipment through IoT structures. And that means that everything, sooner or later, and especially after dynamic changes like the one that we're observing right now, it will only accelerate the digitalization. I will later on show you the sort of cut through analysis through to different sectors so that you can see which sector are right now somewhat saturated, so where already there are scalables and large companies that are active in these sectors, and which areas are not yet digitalized. So for people that are considering new activities, startups, I think that these areas might be quite good niches where they could potentially think about opening their businesses. And once the business is large enough, they can call me, of course. The second area here on this slide is digitalization of relationships. So we have the first element, which is digitalization of the internal part of the company. Then we are moving outside of the company. Yeah? So we're trying to allow the company to connect with the world, and that allows basically real-time analysis, real-time understanding of the surroundings of the company. Because how you see the company, your potential company is just an element of a cycle, of a chain, where you have suppliers that deliver like semi-prepared products, and then customers are using your final product. So if you are able to digitalize these relationships, that allows you to understand your suppliers better, adjust to your specific needs, to where your production is, where your need is at a given moment, and you can do it flexibly. Yeah, so you don't need to, for example, I don't know, buy 3 trucks of products from your supplier. You can link your supplier directly to your production line, to your production process, and therefore the system will automatically order from the supplier to the need. Yes, of course. Then, if you're connected to the customer, then you would know your customer better, and the longer you are cooperating with your customer with the usage of these technologies, that it allows you to know your client better, to know his behaviors, to know when he buys, why he buys, how it's related to his specific parameters, age, location, historical purchases, etc., etc. And generally, you can link everything in a perfect scenario. You can link generally the entire process. So whereas the growth of funds, of investments that have been involved in buying hardware has grown around twice. In the same time, digitalization of relationships has grown 5 times. So we see that the sort of software layer of digitalizing relationships has just accelerating much quicker than like heavy hardware software. Of course, You can see here on the slide that we have also some of the companies like Amazon Web Services, like Azure, like Google, that are trying to sort of accelerate this thanks to sort of making the product computing power more available and more sort of flexibly scalable. So we will see surely some new usage patterns also in this first digitalization of the core. Then the third sort of area, which is I think the least represented among those sectors, is digital management. So how I mean it is that so we have the company is prepared from hardware perspective, software perspective, so has like internal core prepared, then it's sort of connecting with an external world, but then you need to get back to the core and try to create and design systems and processes that are run with the use of technology. Right now, what we can see, and I can see in the companies that I have invested in, and right now I'm supervising, that the companies that have digital workflow that they can connect with their customers, with their clients online, they can practically move everyone to their homes and work 95% of workforce working from home. But that's only possible in big corporation, only if you have these systems already active. So when you if you can see on the slide number 5, these are the sectors. That's actually an analysis done by McKinsey. So you can see that naturally the ICT, media and professional services, and finance and insurance, these are the sectors that are among the most digitalized ones. So both like all the three: assets, usage, so all these sort of relationships and labor are these green squares, which tells us that basically these areas are the most digitalized ones, and they're at the same time the most adaptive ones. So even in the current situation, like this coronavirus situation, they are among the ones that are like that are able to adapt much more quickly to the changing environment. Of course, since our coronavirus situation is unfortunately coupled with a oil and gas crisis, so of course oil and gas utilities, although they are digitalized, it doesn't help them too much in the current circumstances. But for I think the ones that want to invest, I think that you should probably look at the sort of top part of this chart. I think that if you want to create something new, you can see that there is the bottom part of this chart where government and all public sort of activities are rather very are rather scarcely digitalized. Healthcare, you can see that probably there are quite advanced techniques like diagnostics, but in general processes in healthcare are very weakly digitalized. Hospitality, construction and agriculture, of course we have some notable exceptions here, but again these areas of our life and business are not as digitalized. Also, when you see on this in this chart on the right hand side, you see how productivity grew. It was, the data is unfortunately between 2005 and 2014, but that shows how digitalization allows you to use your resources better, how to put your funds and resources to work in the direction and in the processes that make the most effect. So what is important, and I will just jump into the coronavirus situation in a moment. It's very important to build a team that will run the digitalization, yes, so that everyone from this team is bought in the idea why digitalization is required. And I think that right now the good thing within this coronavirus situation is that even if you have your partners in the business, leaders, I don't think that right now it's going to be very difficult to persuade anyone that digitalization is the response to the current situation, and it's a future-proof strategy for a lot of businesses. I think virtually every business sector, I think, is should design and implement their digital strategy. Second area is, I call it look outside. So I think that from the perspective both of sectors, but also geographies, I like when I invest mostly in the Central and Eastern Europe. So I can, for example, look at the American market. I can look at the Nordic market. So there are plenty of companies that have made some decisions and investments and redesign their business model, and we can frequently tell which ideas work and which ideas don't work. Yeah, so I think that looking outside and trying to find ideas, find inspiration is very important. And when you know what you want to do, when you know who's your team, then you can identify gaps. So basically answer the question, what do I have, what I'm missing, yes, and try to sort of fill these gaps. In terms of designing the strategy behind digitalization, is very important to have both these audacious goals that give your team some sense of direction, so that when you climb Mount Everest, you surely don't climb it all at once, but at least you see the summit all the time, or at least when the weather is good. But at least you know the direction. You're planning your way in parts, but in general you always see the direction. So direction is important, but at the same time, short-term goals are also very important. Yes? So when your team and your partners, your leaders, get an understanding that this is moving the right direction, and they will get this sense only through some short-term successes that will prove that strategy. I think two other hints that are, I think, important in digitalization is that the digital talent should be liberated, as I call it. I think that you shouldn't hide your digital talent in the IT department, because it will not sort of influence your operations as it would influence these operations when like a IT partner is selected and is cooperating with a specific department of your company. Especially in large companies, it's very important that this digitalization is sort of evangelized throughout this corporation. Yes, because only then you will have a sort of holistic, thorough approach to this digitalization strategy. And of course, the final one is that you really need to have resources and financing for all of this, because even the best plan, it will not fly without fuel of sort. So that's sort of quite an introduction to digitalization per se. Right now, I will tell you a bit more about how this sort of coronavirus situation, which is quite a wider complexity than just coronavirus. So I believe personally, and I see it just with my own eyes, how companies in my portfolio grow. So the ones that have been digitalized, like e-commerce companies, like data science companies, they are growing like 2 times versus last year, and that just shows me that if the company can adapt, can reach out to the clients, can see, uh, you know, can base their decision making not on what they see in the newspapers or what they see in TV. That can have, if this company have like legitimate good information, that that good decision can be done, can be made. And um, so I will try to give you my perspective, and then we can have a short discussion about it, about what we can learn and how we can change. But I think I put it this as the last point on the slide, is how we can keep balance, because I think that not only from business perspective, but also from, you know, very wide spiritual perspective, that this situation also gives us some time to think over what we have been doing so far, to think over what we can change in our behavior, in our lives, not only from business perspective. This is of course where I can help you, but I think everyone has to think, you know, get to their inside, and try to think what I've been doing, which I should change doing, and or try to do that in a bit different way. So these are like 4 elements that I think are very important in terms of sort of approaching this coronavirus situation from a business and investor perspective. In general, you need to always have a high-level view on all of that. So you need to see like the entire battlefield at one point. So you cannot go too deeply into one of these areas at a given point. And I think that you should do them in this in this order. Yeah, I think that one notable example that was done in a different order, like it was Amazon just quite recently. Amazon was more focused on business sustainability. They, I think, forgot about this first element of protection, and you saw that that basically led to warehouse employees being very dissatisfied, almost striking, rioting in some of of those locations, because the business prevailed. And I think that that's one notable exception. You can see in Amazon a recent quarterly statement that they have now amassed $4 billion to just show everyone that they are serious about protection. So I put here Hamza hand, because that's Hamza hand is a symbol of protection, and that's really important, that you always need to realize that your clients and your employees are your most important assets. Even if your technology is, you know, state of art, the most advanced technology, always need people, and these people need to be protected by all means, and that's number one. Second thing, also very important, is communication. So everyone in the organization, everyone outside of the organization, all the stakeholders should be very sort of on the regular basis informed about what the company is doing right now, what the company is doing to improve safety. And I see even smaller companies in e-commerce, of course, much smaller than Amazon, that I have in my portfolio. I've been doing this very well, starting exactly from this very point, and the effects are much different than those of Amazon. And the third thing is coordination. Yes, so you cannot like start to run like ants, you know, without direction, because that's just wastes an energy of the team and gets you nowhere. Yeah. So so these are like the three main items. You need to then put these main items into a plan. So how I do the planning, I do the planning in a way that it sort of starts from a very bad plan, but then we move few steps ahead and we sort of settle on a bad, like a conservative plan, but not as conservative, like not the most conservative, so that we have the way up. If we see that the situation gets a bit better than we assumed, then we can get a bit down if we see that we've been too optimistic. Yeah, so it's very important to have these few plans that allows you to sort of adapt to the given situation. And very important is that you need to see and you need to secure cash flow. Yes, because if you run out of cash, the most difficult thing in this current circumstances would be receive financing. Yes, because you can know your company, you can know your employees can know your company, your client can know your company, but financing parties are in these current circumstances very let's say difficult circumstances will not help you. Yeah. And the second area is balance. Yes, you need to try to use tools that allow you to regain balance. So I put here ideas like e-commerce, marketplace, or the geographic diversification. And I think it's very important that you use those digital tools. And some of these points here show you areas that I believe will grow in the future. Yes, so outsourcing, e-commerces and marketplaces, tools that allow you to monitor, and tools that allow you to digitalize your relationship with your human resources, your talent, and your top management. Then we get to transformation. So when you know what you have, what you want to do, then you need to sort of take it all together and try and start to change, try to adapt to the situation. But you need to know if the direction that you've taken, especially in the circumstances that are very volatile, you need to have a system that tells you if you're moving the right direction. So things like real-time data analysis, usage of AI, digitalization of relationships with suppliers, partners, and customers, the thing that I discussed before, are very important to employ. And the next thing is adjustment. So I put here a symbol of Denkiem, which is a symbol of adaptability. I think that it's very important that if companies survive and how these companies will survive this situation, I think that they need to learn their lesson and they need to implement these lessons in their future business models. And I think that right now the obvious trends are digitalization and automation. So I think that to sum up, I think that in the future, the most developing segments, at least in the next 18 to 24 months, would be e-commerce and marketplaces, because the traditional retail will be, let's say, catching up to their historical level very long time. I think that people will no longer be that interested to go to big shopping malls and as long as, I mean, so long as their sort of memories about coronavirus stay in their heads. The second thing is mobility and cloud technologies. I think that everything that allows you to be mobile, be responsive, be able to scale up your required sort of computing power, etc., will be very important sectors. Data technologies, because you have to have an online access, real-time access to information to tell you if your company, your clients are behaving in the way that is beneficial to your business. Then B2B services, AI, machine learning, and IoT are among the others that I think are the ones that should be observed. Yeah. So that's my last slide. I think that we have still some time for questions. So if there are questions, I can answer them now.
What is B2B services?
It's business to business.
Oh, okay. I just didn't recognize the short form. Okay.
So are there any questions?
So I can ask a question for small businesses, because we were talking a lot about big businesses. So for small businesses, what is the way to go? Is it to go and join the marketplace for some, to search some international angle and international customers? Or to be more digitalized and stay within the area of your current customers? I'm talking about.
So depends on a specific area that is important. Yes. So I think that in these current circumstances, and especially for small business, I think that you should be flexible. Yes. So I think that small businesses should take very much carefully this flexibility area. Yes. So if your costs are low and you can basically very quickly adapt to the changing situation, you are able to tackle sudden changes of the market dynamic very quickly. Yes, of course, you mentioned marketplace. Of course, marketplace, it gives you generally an access to quite a diverse and big base of customers. So normally I observe like herding instincts of clients. So generally they are rather focusing on purchasing in big marketplace, like purchasing or using services from big marketplace websites. So that basically gives you some hint as to, even if you want to, let's say, develop, for example, your own brand, I think it's very important to diversify and have your brand, for example, developed separately, but also be present on a marketplace that gives you access to a larger clientele that is not as sort of changing.